I'm Mike.
I'm Sam. Let's get into it. Welcome to episode 61 of the Mike and Sam Sports Show. We got a pretty jam-packed episode for you guys today. We're talking about baseball and NFL and NBA, and we're coming by our resident Boston sports advisor, Jack Murphy. If you want to introduce yourself to the podcast waves.
I'm Jack, Sam's buddy from school, and I come from Massachusetts, so obviously repping my New England teams pretty hard, and excited to talk some sports with you guys today.
Yeah, thanks for hopping on the show. So our first topic today, we have the Astros return to New York against the Yankees yesterday. I think they're playing right now as we speak, and then tomorrow, Thursday. So the Yankees played pretty well. They beat the Astros 7-3, and then, it was a pretty intense atmosphere. Even with half or 25% capacity, they were really letting them hear it. And then Altuve, Bregman, and Carlos Correa really got the brunt of the boost. So, I mean, I know this is a bad thing for baseball, but I'm kind of with this intense atmosphere, I kind of think it's a good thing for baseball that they're creating such an intense rivalry, because there's not really much of that going on in baseball. I think it's slowly declining with their fandom. So what do you guys think about this kind of this intense atmosphere, and then the crowd using profanities to boo towards Jose Altuve?
Yeah, I think this is a good thing for baseball. I think for the MLB at this point, all publicity is good publicity, even if it's bad publicity. I think you just have to get baseball, your players, your best teams like the Astros and the Yankees are. I know not this season, but just on the airwaves getting circulated. To me, the first thing I thought of when I saw the story, wow, the Astros did the absolute impossible. The Astros made Yankees fans liked among sports fans, because I think Yankees fans probably along with Pittsburgh Steelers fans are some of the most hated sports fans. But for really the whole MLB community to unite and root for Yankees fans, I think it's just insane to me.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. When are the Yankees fans really liked? And I mean, they got screwed with the Astros. I mean, just a terrible. I saw something today about Glaber talking about how he thought that they were cheating even more in 2018 and 2019. I mean, if you're going to cheat like that and then you're going to win, I mean, you're not going to stop. And like you said, good. Any publicity for baseball is good, because they take the fun out of the game. I remember last year when Tatis hit that grand slam on the Rangers, and they all freaked out about him, about how he was breaking the unwritten rules. And then earlier this year, that guy for the Reds, I never say his name right, Castellanos. You guys know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Guy used to play for Detroit.
Nick Castellanos or something like that.
Yeah. And he had that. He was having some beef with that pitcher. I think he hit him or he walked him or something. And then he ends up scoring, and he's on top of him, and then he flexes on him. Didn't really yell anything, but just gave a little energy, and the fans are fired up. And then MLB is they're no fun. Suspended for 4 games. It's just, I don't know. They're taking the fun out of the game, and I don't know. They need it, because they sided with the Astros, who just did something so bad.
Yeah, they were 100% side with the Astros. Not there was really no intense punishments that went down on them. I mean, that's why the NBA, NFL, and maybe even hockey. I know hockey is kind of more of a niche sport for some people, so not a lot of people watch it. But these two sports of baseball or basketball and football, they've been increasing views year after year. But baseball is slowly declining, so they need moments like this, where the Yankees fans are booing the crap out of the Astros, and they need moments like when Tatis hits a home run off Bauer and he covers his eye in celebration as a little, despite him what he did in spring training. So baseball really needs to embrace these kind of these egos that they didn't want for so long, because for some reason the commissioner and the front offices, they just want to stay put in the 1900s for some reason. They don't want to come to the 21st century.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the Yankees fans booing the Astros, I think it would definitely still happen regardless of Rob Manfred's response to the Astros. But the fact that they got just a slap on the wrist, I think really bothers the entire MLB community. And that's why I think kind of just everybody in the MLB fandom is coming together and are saying the Yankees fans are doing God's work right now. I know after the game, I'm blanking on his name, the Astros manager was
Dusty
saying,
Baker.
Yeah, Dusty Baker, great name, but was saying, "Oh, Altuve was getting it so hard from the fans. He doesn't deserve this." Like, yes, he does. He absolutely does deserve this. And honestly, this was something I've been anticipating for a really long time. The Astros return to New York. I know a lot of people were saying, "Oh, the Yankees didn't even get the grunt of it. It was the Dodgers." But the Yankees definitely still significantly
Yeah.
got cheated
Yeah,
by the Astros.
you go back to the what was it, ALCS. Chapman's on the mound. He throws that pitch, and then Altuve hits the home run. And then he's rounding the bases, and he's like holding here, and he's like, "Don't touch me," as he's going to home. Like everybody thinks that's a buzzer, and he's saying it's a crappy tattoo, but no one ever saw the tattoo. There's so much so much unknown about it. That's why Altuve definitely got the brunt of it. Like they're all trying to like protect one another. I get it, they're teammates, but you got at one point you got to be like, all right, enough's enough in this Astros organization.
And Altuve knows he's guilty. Like you saw him in that championship series or like the stretch run, really. I mean, that championship series is bad, but he had the yips, it's like it's all guilt. He's all, he knows he did it. And everyone's telling him like you can't be here. Oh, you cheaters. And he totally fell for it. He was not himself last year. And like you said, everyone's waiting to get at the Astros. I mean, we talking about people who before the show, like people who are winning COVID. I mean, people who won COVID were the Astros. I remember how heated people were ready to, like people were before the season. Like you could take bets on who's getting hit the most, who's getting hit first, and like everyone was gonna get plunked, whether it was Altuve, Bregman, that guy Gorell, all of them. They were screwed, and they got so lucky with not getting anyone suspended and then COVID stopping the season and kind of changing everyone's minds.
Yeah, I think they wanted to, with all that said, just slide everything in the past. Like, oh, it happened, but it didn't really happen. But when fans really start dissecting the numbers and you see just the entire team significantly better with their batting average throughout those playoff series at home and just kind of starting to add up the numbers again. Like you said, with that Altuve home run saying, "Don't rip my shirt off." I remember after the game, he was like, "Oh, it was a bad tattoo." And then kind of he spoke to the media after and he changed his story up a little bit. And he's like, "Oh, if I rip my shirt off, my wife would be upset at me." He was just all over the face, all over the place. Anybody that could kind of spot a liar definitely knew Altuve was it with his body language. So it was just the way they responded to it. I know one of the players' wives too just went on a absolute rampage on Twitter saying like they don't deserve all the hate they're getting, and everyone absolutely exploded at them. So just the way they respond to it as well was really shitty.
Yeah, definitely. And even like again, going back to the MLB, like Joe Kelly when he like struck out I think it was Altuve last year, and he made that like little frowny face. I feel like they gave him more of a hard time with his suspension than the Astros got after cheating their way to a World Series.
Yeah, they gave him 8 games of 60. Like that was what, like 10%, something like that of this season. Like no one's ever gotten whatever percentage he was. I'm completely wrong, but I remember seeing a stat. Whatever percentage of the season he got for his 8-9 games was the highest in years. The only guys to touch that were steroid guys, and just crazy how they clearly are always changing how they cheat. They're talking about the buzzer and then the trash can. I was listening to this thing about this Astros fan who went through like 2017 and 2018 and was tracking the trash cans, and he found out that there was definitely other ways they were cheating beyond the buzzer, beyond the trash can, and it's so much deeper than MLB wants to tell us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look towards the future with this and say, I think the MLB has to look back and realize they handled this situation in terms of the Astros punishment very poorly and just the absolute backlash by this. I think the league from now on is going to kind of have a microscope on the Astros organization. And near the future, I anticipate something happening like the Patriots in the NFL, where Roger Goodell really believed that he didn't handle the Spygate situation well at all. He got a lot of backlash with how he handled Spygate. And so he was kind of looking for the next way to get down on the Patriots, which Deflategate happened. And Deflategate, I think today, is absolutely and completely debunked. And I think the NFL knew Deflategate was debunked as well, but they just wanted to come down with a "we got you" revenge kind of punishment. And I think the MLB is going to look to do the same at some point in the future.
I mean, I feel like in the moment, there's always like if it happens, you make a decision about a team, with a suspension or if they cheat, in the moment you make a decision, and then in the future, obviously people are gonna have a hard time with it. People are gonna be pissed off, but like some of the route, yeah, like you did, like Deflategate, even as a Colts fan, maybe it was a little bit, it was a little bit
Oh,
interesting.
very much, very much. I mean, it's basic science, Sam. It's basic science.
I don't know. We don't need to get into that right now. And then this Astros thing, like they cut some corners with the decisions they were going to make about these organizations. So I don't know. There might be a cause and effect later down the road.
No, I like that, Mike. I actually think that's why Deflategate was that bad, because obviously I never really knew what was going on with Spygate, and then to delete the tapes is just like to not suspend them and to not release like the sounds of the trash cans. Like it's literally the same thing. And like you said, if the Astros get caught slipping again, they have to punish them bad, or else they're gonna lose all integrity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I just have to add one thing. Sam, let's not act like the Colts didn't get obliterated in that game.
Yeah,
Don't worry about it.
I mean,
We don't need to talk about
our
that
left
part.
tackle scored a touchdown on you guys.
Yeah, well, like you had the deflated ball, It makes it easier.
200 rushing yards out of Garrett Blunt, but it's all right.
All right, using that as a segue, we're going to get right into the NFL. So the draft was this past week. First three picks were obviously quarterbacks. The only times that happened was in 1977 and 1999, I want to say. So what are you guys' thoughts, initial thoughts on the draft as a whole, or if you want to specifically talk about different draft picks, you're more than welcome to.
I mean, the draft definitely started at number 3, so I think we should probably start off by talking about the 49ers getting Trey Lance. As an Arizona Cardinals fan, I was really nervous that this was going to happen, because if they pick Mac Jones, basically, to me, that's like, at best, you're picking a healthy Jimmy Garoppolo, and you're kind of running it back with the same system, same scheme, same kind of philosophy, which obviously the 49ers are a very dangerous team in that way. But if you can get a really, really high upside guy, a guy who entering the league is very raw, hasn't played football outside of that one kind of really weird game this season in about a year and a half. And just Trey Lance, like the upside of Trey Lance is really, really frightening. And I think he could end up being a top 5 quarterback with Kyle Shanahan. But there's a lot of ifs about Trey Lance. So this definitely has the potential to be a big bust.
Yeah, I'm happy they went Trey Lance, and I couldn't believe that there was ideas that they're going to go Mac Jones. And I know my team now has Mac Jones. I'm not a big Mac Jones fan. Kind of like you said, I think he's just a healthy Jimmy G. With the Patriots getting him, my question is, okay, he's great on the rookie contract. When you got to pay him $30 million a year and he's got to cover for the 2-3 starters you let up to sign him that deal, is he going to be able to do that? And I feel like Trey Lance, even though he's had an interesting college career, to say the least, being an FCS guy, being on a team where, some people would say that, the difference of North Dakota State playing your average FCS team is, a greater difference of talent than Alabama playing your average FBS team. But Trey Lance he's got the big arm that can make the throws that he wants, Kyle Shanahan wants down the field. He may not be pinpoint accuracy, but you can't teach Mac Jones that athleticism versus trying to teach Trey Lance how to, be a little more consistent with his 15 to 25 yard passes. So I like what San Francisco can do, even though they kind of traded a lot of unnecessary capital to get up to 3.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with all three of you. I really like this pick for San Francisco. I know, like, reports are saying that they were really big fans of Mac Jones, and I don't really understand that. I don't know if it was just a smokescreen to confuse other teams, but I think, they were successful with Jimmy G, obviously, but having him at quarterback kind of limit them a lot, because they were forced to run the ball down the field a lot, because Jimmy G, like, he's not the greatest passer, so they kind of became one-dimensional by having like these quick passes, kind of gimmicky plays, running the ball down the other team's throat. So by drafting Trey Lance, they can open up things in the passing game they don't have to really rely on just game management from their quarterback. So I really like this. Mac Jones going to his pick. The Patriots got him. I think he will be successful there, but I don't think they're gonna be able to have the type of success, like obviously not Tom Brady, but I don't know if they're gonna even like have success in the playoffs with him because he's coming from a team where Alabama, where he was kind of fed everything with a silver spoon in his mouth. The weapons around him. Like, I'm curious to see how he's gonna play out when he does have. He doesn't have the best line in the league. He doesn't have the best weapons in the league. So I'm curious to see how he can play.
Yeah, I can't wait for when, inevitably, of course, if Mac Jones has a bad game in the NFL for the Patriots, all of the pro day memes where Mac Jones has an overthrow and then Bill Belichick is just shaking his head after it. But getting in the Mac Jones pick, I think it's a good pick. I think you have to look for the future of your quarterback position. It's kind of weird how I feel like Patriots fandom goes from like Jarrett Stidham's the guy. Jarrett Stidham was really highly regarded out of high school. He's one of the best Texas high school quarterbacks of all time. He had a really good year at Auburn, but then the year he was coming out, he kind of went from a second round fringe day one pick to what a fourth round pick, then to Mac Jones. And it's kind of funny if you watch his, I want to say 2017 college season, then watch Mac Jones. I know Mac Jones has a significant more amount of talent around him at Alabama compared to Auburn, but I think they're very similar quarterbacks in a way. And I know Jarrett Stidham is not going down without a fight. I know he's been gathering up all the guys. The second they got Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, Kendrick Bourne, he invited all of them out, flew them all out, and practiced with them, which I'd love to see out of even the third string quarterback. But I think going into the season, everything Bill Belichick and what he was saying about wanting to win now, I think that's still absolutely valid and true. And I do think Cam Newton is going to play as long as he can this season.
Yeah, I like how you brought up Stidham because that's kind of why I'm 50-50 on the pick. I mean, I don't really, I'm not a big Mac Jones guy, and I would have liked, obviously, being an Ohio State guy doesn't help, but I would have liked trading up for Fields or whoever fell between Fields or Lance because, they Patriots can't really draft in the first or second round, so why not get rid of them? Get a guy on the rookie quarterback contract and then just kind of sign people to fill the holes. But I'm just happy that they took the guy with less question marks than Kellen Mond and Davis Mills because they've been trying that for years. They had Tom Brady, they had Josh McDaniels, Bill Belichick, all in the building, and they draft Ryan Mallett and they draft Jarrett Stidham and all these guys who they think could be the guy in the future. And even Jimmy G, who really isn't. I mean, he was on a super team. I mean, if you can beat Aaron Rodgers' team by 30 points and you threw the ball 7 times, I mean, your team is really just that much better than the other team. And so I like how they drafted the guy with less question marks, but we'll see. Like Sam said, I know that I like the tight ends they signed this year, but their best receivers are Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne. So they definitely got to see how those guys do on the field. And they have a good O line. They have some young guys who actually played well last year, but I just don't think Mac Jones is going to be the long-term solution because at some point, unless he adjusts and he's this smarty pants that all the NFL teams think he is, I don't know. I don't see him as the guy who can carry that team when he's $30 million player if he ever gets to that point.
I mean, I think at 15, like the value of drafting him was there. Like, it's kind of like a low risk because like who else would they draft that was on the board? It's kind of like a low risk, high ceiling type pick. So I think if it works out, a lot of people are gonna be praising them. Like if it doesn't work out, I don't think like that many people are like, oh, why would they pick him if it doesn't work out? I think it's just a low risk type pick, and like if it works out, it's gonna be a grand slam for them. But just looking at Mac Jones, like everybody says he's a grinder. I mean, looking at the picture, he's an absolute unit. He's very chonkish. He needs to kind of hit the weight room for some reason, but he has a good arm. He's smart. So I think has the potential to work out. I'm not gonna say I'm rooting for him. I'm not gonna say I'm rooting for the Patriots because that'd be against my Colts fandom.
Yeah, I mean, to say the very least, I think Mac Jones is going to be a better pro than Tua Tagovailoa is, but I don't think that's setting the bar very high at all. But getting into Justin Fields a little bit, looking at what Jim McMahon said their last really successful quarterback. I know Jay Cutler had some success in there. I know Rex Grossman kind of, sort of took them to a Super Bowl, but when you're right before the draft, when you're really best quarterback in QB history or franchise history for the Bears says Chicago is the place where quarterbacks go to die. They end up trading up for Justin Fields. This was a save my job type of pick. The front office, if Justin Fields is out, this front office, this coaching staff is absolutely out. And I think even after year one, if they don't see some sort of success with Justin Fields, I don't think Justin Fields by any means is going to be out. He's going to get a longer leash, in my opinion, just like Mitch Trubisky did. But I think this entire coaching staff is out. So I think we are going to see Justin Fields sooner rather than later with the Bears.
Yeah, I do wonder how many games they give him too, because they got Andy Dalton and Nick Foles. All the seems like out of the camp there that they don't want to get rid of either of those guys, and that they want him to learn from both of them. And like you said, I think that the coaching staff and the front office know that this is it. And I do like Nagy as a coach. I do think that he definitely is the type of guy like Kyle Shanahan with Jimmy Garoppolo to just be kind of hit or miss on his quarterback. If he doesn't feel you, he's going to shut the playbook on you like he did with Mitch Trubisky. And he's got Allen Robinson, and I like Mooney. But other than that, that offense has been kind of suspect. That they can build a defense out there, but even though Nagy may have some good play calls, they kind of just have those three playmakers and those two receivers, and then Montgomery.
Yeah, quickly backtracking. I just want to say that, a lot of the wide receivers at Alabama did say they thought Mac Jones was better than Tua, going off your point what you said, Michael. But, yeah, I mean, obviously being an Ohio State guy, I really hope Justin Fields succeeds. I think he's our best quarterback we've ever had. Him and Troy Smith are up there, arguably 1 and 2. So I really do hope he's successful. I just think, like, this Matt Nagy, this kind of this regime that they have at the coaching staff, I don't think they're good at all. I know they made the playoffs last year, but Nagy, like, his play calling in certain situations is pretty abysmal. Like, he like the first year when they made the playoffs, the double doink, like, I was like, all right, this guy can be like, they can get some weapons there, get some more better players, and maybe there'll be a force in the NFC. But no, he looks so lost. He came from what? He came from the Andy Reid coaching tree.
Yeah.
So a lot of people come from that coaching tree and they're successful, but he just doesn't. I don't think he had ever what it took to be an NFL head coach. He just seems like, as a head coach, he just seems like a glorified offensive coordinator. But I really hope this Justin Field works out. I know probably Andy Dalton's going to start this year. I don't know how many games it's going to be till Fields is put in, but Fields is a baller. He has a massive arm. He ran a 4.4 around there. So that's a big guy running at a very fast speed. So, it's going to be hard to track him down. He's mobile around the top pocket. He's a modern day NFL quarterback. So I think he has those tools to be successful. It's just whether the organization is able to groom him into being successful as he should be.
Yeah, and with Matt Nagy, what makes me really nervous about the Matt Nagy Justin Fields pairing isn't so much X's and O's. It's kind of the personalities, because Matt Nagy throughout the Mitch Trubisky saga in Chicago really always went to the media and tried to paint him as the good guy and Mitch Trubisky as the bad guy. He would always make very passive aggressive comments about, oh, Chase Daniels is in this week because Mitch Trubisky is out with injury. I have a more full playbook. I can call more plays under Chase Daniels. And he would always make little slight comments to Mitch Trubisky in that way. And he absolutely cannot do that with Justin Fields. Justin Fields is going to be a rookie. He's going to go through his ups and downs, but the media is already absolutely lambasting Justin Fields. I was telling Sam, I watched their opening press conference with Justin Fields live, and it was like the Chicago Tribune, like Chicago newspapers absolutely grilling Justin Fields. I think the first question of the entire press conference was, why did you look so bad in your Indiana game? And right there to start it off, it was like, wow, welcome to Chicago, Justin Fields. And I felt very bad for him. So I think Matt Nagy needs to be aware of this and try to prop up his quarterback to the media, not even for his image sake, but just for his own confidence sake.
That's actually crazy, Mike, that's what was going on there.
Yeah.
I don't get obviously being an Ohio State person, I've enjoyed watching Justin Fields and am all on his side, but I really haven't understood the hate for him. Just going back to the Indiana game, or whether it was that the Clemson game last year. It's like everyone forgot about this year's Clemson game, or I don't know. It's like with Justin Fields, he's kind of getting picked apart a lot more than Mac Jones or Trey Lance did, or even Zach Wilson. I mean, Zach Wilson didn't play a Power 5 team this year. No wonder he had a 78%, 77% completion percentage, whatever it was, that everyone was drooling about. And he could make the Aaron Rodgers throws in shorts. I think Zach Wilson could be really good, but and the Jets definitely made the picks in this draft to kind of show like they're all in on building around him. But I just didn't understand how Fields 2 years against talent much better than Zach Wilson or Trey Lance, and then Mac Jones is a 1-year starter with all those first round picks. Just how do you pick apart one guy that much more than the other ones? But not to change up the subject on you guys, I had to ask you. You guys seem, I'm not like I'm a Tua like fanatic that I'm believing Tua is MVP next year, but you guys are very, very down on Tua. I don't really understand.
This is an anti-Tua podcast.
Yeah, so I guess going into our origins of our Tua, so we first started this podcast last year, and we were really psyched up for last year's draft. It was the first year where we were doing our QB rankings, our draft rankings, and we had a couple podcasts just talking about the quarterbacks and these guys alone. And my opinion with Tua was always, it really, really bothered me, the notion that if Tua never had any injuries in college, then he'd be neck and neck with Joe Burrow as a prospect, because I think Joe Burrow and Tua are on a whole different playing field in terms of prospects. I think if Joe Burrow had that hip injury and Tua didn't, I would still take Joe Burrow number one. I wouldn't even take Tua. With Tua, with me, I just never saw it. I always talked about it with Sam. Just I don't even know where to begin with Tua. His presence in the pocket is really, really bad. He's just very skittish in the pocket. He's really bad at avoiding big hits, which is definitely an issue in college and going in the next level. He never at Alabama threw with anticipation. That's where I look at Mac Jones and say, hey, he's throwing to some open receivers, but at least he's throwing with some anticipation. And with Tua, they had to be open before he threw it. But with Mac Jones, that wasn't really the case. And he's just a very college-esque quarterback to me. I would take Tua in college over Mac Jones. I really would. But I do think Mac Jones is going to be a better pro. And with Tua, I just don't see it. His deep ball isn't very good. The way they handled that situation down in Miami last year, I think was horrible. Makes me nervous when I see a guy's former college teammates go out and not support him. Leaks among the Dolphins higher up saying they don't believe in him, and then anonymous players on the Dolphins saying they don't believe in him. It's just really weird to me. I think Tua's a great guy and a really hard worker, but I just don't see the talent there. Last year, I had Joe Burrow number one. Then I had Jordan Love number two, which the jury's still out on that. If I could switch that, I would definitely put Justin Herbert at number two, then Jordan Love at number three. But that was kind of my opinion back then, and I still do hold it true to a certain extent today.
Yeah, pretty similar. I'll say what I'll say.
I wanted to just answer that because I totally get the like the players, like that's sketchy, but I just don't buy. I mean, this is just my personal opinion. I don't buy that the coaches and the GMs don't believe in him. You know what I mean? Like they literally they were salivating over him the minute he threw that game-winning touchdown. They planned on tanking specifically for him. That whole season was because of him, because of Joe Burrow having that 1 year. And I mean, not to go against Joe Burrow, but it was I felt like it was a Herbert Tua type draft kind of coming for most of the year, and then Joe Burrow has that crazy season, so you're like, okay, you got to rethink this. But with Tua, also that coordinator that they had, Chan Gailey, he was awful, and he missed one game this year with COVID, and that was Tua's best game. And he used to be the coordinator for the Bills from the early 2000s, late 2000s, early 2010s. So I saw him a lot as a Patriots fan, and he ran the most basic offenses. And they've gotten O-line for him, O-linemen through the draft and signings. They signed Will Fuller, they signed Jalen Waddle, and I don't think he's a great anticipatory thrower. And like you said, he can't keep himself healthy. I don't like that hip injury, but I hate the idea of giving up on him after 1 year. I mean, if it's Deshaun Watson, you got to do it. But if you're just gonna go like, okay, we're at the third pick, like there's no point in drafting a Trey Lance or a Zach Wilson over him after you already have him for 1 year. I mean, you're kind of stuck on it. It ruins the whole point of. I mean, then again, with like it worked with Kyler Murray, but Kyler Murray, I feel like is much more of a sure thing coming out than Zach Wilson and Trey Lance were, and you saw it with Josh Allen. I mean, I saw rookie Josh Allen at Gillette Stadium. He completed 40% of his passes, and he threw one ball. It was just a 10-yard out to John Brown, and he threw it like way over his head to Devin McCourty for an easy pick. And I was just like, oh my God, this guy is terrible. Never in a million years would I thought 2 years he's winning me all my fantasy leagues and he's 40 touchdowns. And so I just think that Tua's got the intelligence to, maybe he's not a superstar, but I think that he could be the guy for them in some sense with the receivers they have and the running backs they have, and not totally a superstar, but not totally a bust, if that makes sense.
No, it's kind of like the opposite effect of Justin Fields. He comes out, the season ends, and then everybody just starts slandering Justin Fields. Like I feel like I think Justin Fields has better skill than Tua has, but then Tua coming into the draft, like everybody was praising him. Everybody had him like second. They were just shitting on Justin Herbert, who had a better year. But I just think not Justin Fields, Tua, watching like film and highlights of, the games at Alabama, I just think he was behind on all of his throws. Waddle and Smith, they had to adjust it for the ball because his throws were kind of behind. So like in NFL, when that window is so much tighter than it was in college, like he's not going to be able to make those throws that he did in college. And I also think he thinks he's much more athletic than he really is. Like constantly, he's always getting dragged down from behind, sacked from behind as he's trying to escape the pocket. And that's what results of all those ankle injuries he has and that hip injury too. So I'm just skeptical about how, him still think can make these throws, still think he can scram out of the pocket when he doesn't really have the skills of what I've seen, while watching him. But I think he could be successful. I know last year he did have a couple good games, but then he also had games where he threw for like 90 yards too. So last year was kind of a bad year to look at him because he did have some highlights, some downs. So it's hard to, really make a concrete decision already. But hopefully this year he goes in as the starter, and we'll see what he does.
Yeah, absolutely. Jack, I completely agree with everything you were saying. Tua went 6-2, 6-3, I want to say, as a starter. He beat my Arizona Cardinals. And the point you made about Josh Allen, yeah, absolutely correct. Watching Josh Allen his rookie season, I thought he would never, ever in a million years be good. And look at this. He's a perennial MVP candidate now going into next season. So with Tua, I think it would be horrible process too, because I know a lot of people before the draft were advocating them to go QB with the 6th pick. I would not do that. I completely disagree with that. You did just take this guy with the 5th pick in the NFL draft. I think it's really shitty that things are coming out about him, even though they're rumors. I just don't like that things are coming out about him that people don't believe in him. And I don't really hold merit into that personally, but kind of going into Tua, I think the hype machine you were talking about with Tua and their entire season was dedicated to tank for Tua. I think that put a little bit of blind faith and blind trust into Tua as a prospect. And I think going into the draft or just scouting season after their season was over, I think it was just kind of a foregone conclusion that, oh, we're going with Tua. This entire season was the tank for Tua, instead of sitting down, doing their homework and saying, is Tua the guy or should we take Justin Herbert? Which, I think it's way too early to say that Justin Herbert is going to be better than Tua, but I think in hindsight, year one, you definitely rather have Justin Herbert than Tua, even though I wasn't high on Justin Herbert myself either. So with Tua, it's just, I don't know, it makes me nervous. Something's a little bit off about Tua, in my opinion. I look at the Wonderlic score that Tua put up last year, and with the Wonderlic, I don't hold any merit into it unless you get a really bad score or a really good score. And I think Tua had the worst recorded. Sam, you want to interject?
I can say I think Justin Fields had like one of the highest Wonderlic scores in recent NFL history.
He did.
You like to see
I
it, but
saw
I
that.
think Tua had the lowest recorded quarterback score, not the lowest score, but the lowest quarterback score ever recorded, if I'm not mistaken. And then I look at Jerry Jeudy, who got a 7 on the Wonderlic, which is one of the lowest scores ever. Jerry Jeudy led the NFL in drops last year. And when I watched Tua and Jerry Jeudy, it just seems like they couldn't play the game and they were thinking way too much. They were just overthinking and thinking about the play, the assignment, what everyone has to do on the field to the point where they can't just clear their mind and play the game of football. And football, from a physical standpoint, is hard enough. But when you don't have the mental aspect there yet, then it's really hard. So I think that's why we'll see an improved Tua in the future because that mental aspect is going to come with him. But the mental ceiling on Tua, I'm not sure how high it is.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great debate. It's it's who knows. It's only something you're going to tell with who plays, and I just think that quarterback's kind of it's the one position in sports that's it's a experience based position. The more the better. You're going the more you play, the more you learn. And I mean, I'm definitely going to eat my words on this. I feel like they probably didn't realize. I don't think anyone realized how good Justin Herbert was going to be. I'll have to send you guys the video. There's a guy on YouTube who broke down why he didn't want to draft Justin Herbert. And then he went back to those tapes and realized he's like, why I was wrong, why we're all wrong. And it's kind of why it was a big thing on, I remember telling some people this when Clemson lost to Ohio State and kind of talking about how they just used Trevor Lawrence wrong. And I think that was the thing with Justin Herbert is that he was just used wrong in college. And the tape can lie to you. And Herbert is probably going to be better than Tua. I think that's safe to say because he's just such a natural thrower of the ball. He's tall. He's got the ability to throw it outside of his pocket. And but also, I did think a big thing was kind of like with the Patriots, they have some draft picks that from last year that I'm still kind of big on. But I think that the rookie camp and just kind of throwing them into the fire this year. And last year can and can't not be a lost season. And I mean, you had Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert look like superstars with no rookie camp, but you had some other guys who you think were going to be good that just kind of struggled. And I feel like Tua's the type of guy who needs his reps because, like you said, he can't stay healthy. And I don't like the hip injury. It's all bad, but I feel like he does have some type of, um, you know, he does have some type of it factor. I mean, he did at Alabama, and like people rallied around him in the moment. But now looking back, everyone's kind of against him, and it's all Mac Jones. So I don't know. It's a weird situation.
Yeah, going back to some other picks that we have in this NFL draft, I want to talk about the Bengals deciding, their offensive weapons were more important than Joe Burrow's knees and drafting Jamar Chase. So, what are your guys' opinions on them, drafting Jamar Chase instead of Penei Sewell, who's been, talked about as one of the best offensive line prospects in quite some time?
Yeah, I think in our previous episode, I said with the Bengals pick, if I was their GM, I would write down Chase. Why am I blanking on his name? I would
Jamar
have
Chase.
definitely, yeah, Jamar Chase. Jesus, I would have wrote Jamar Chase on the card, and I would have had to have somebody yank it out of my hand and call in Penei Sewell because I think Penei Sewell is the right pick. I think it is the safe pick. I think it's the correct pick. But I would have drafted Jamar Chase. It's way too tempting to match a guy like that of that caliber. Everyone's comparing him to like a faster version of Anquan Bolton. I love Jamar Chase. I think he's going to be great in the NFL. I look at him and I say he's the only guy I have basically 100% confidence that he is going to be a number one receiver in the NFL. Everyone else, I have some question marks that if they can be a true number one. And I think that's very valuable in the NFL. But at the same time, Joe Burrow, just every play, even despite him just obliterating his knee, tearing two ligaments in his knee, even despite that, just every play, he was just getting nailed every single play. And I think in part, that's them having to adjust their system to their offensive line and getting the ball out of Joe Burrow's hands quicker. Their best offensive line game last year, funny enough, was the game where their entire offensive line was wiped out by injuries and I think COVID. and they had all third strings going in, and they didn't give up a sack that entire game. And that's the only game Joe Burrow didn't have grass stains all over his jersey. So with Zach Taylor, he just has to adjust his system, get the ball out of their hands quickly, similar with what they do in Arizona, kind of trying to mask up and scheme up that offensive line to help their quarterback. But at the end of the day, I would have done the same decision, but I just don't think it's the right decision.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same place as you, Mike. Like I can't tell if it's like the safe decision is Sewell, but like the fun, like but even you could be so dynamic with Jamar Chase. Not the first round pick receivers like are kind of overvalued in my opinion. I saw a stat about how since 2016 the average first round receiver is rookie season is 42 receptions, 600 yards, and then the average second round season was like 43 and a half receptions, 580 yards. And, AJ Brown, DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin, some of the best receivers, young receivers were found in rounds 2 and 3. And I feel like Joe Burrow is just the type of guy that if you give him an O-line, he's going to throw guys open. He's going to find the open man. And definitely what I think his superpower is his ability to spread the ball. Like he can, he's a guy who has 6, 7, a great game for him is he had 6 or 7 guys catch the football, but Jamar Chase and him definitely have that connection that could make them throwing the ball really special. But ever since Joe Burrow got drafted, you saw the memes about how they're not going to be able to protect him. Then they didn't. He get that injury, and now it's like, okay, well they want to the thing of Joe Burrow throwing the ball at Jamar Chase but getting hit versus Joe Burrow throwing the ball deep but getting protected with Sewell. Like all those memes are just great because they're so true. And you knew Cincinnati was going to bite and take Jamar Chase. And like you said, Mike, it's probably not the right decision. I like it. You can come around. You can fix it. But and also like they have faith in Jonah Williams, that guy they drafted from Bama a couple years ago. That he's a left tackle, but he misses his entire first season, and then he played, I think, 9 games last year. It's just that guy's your left tackle. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you can think about like this pick, having Jamar Chase, it solidifies our wide receivers. They have T. Higgins, they have Tyler Boyd, so like they don't really have to address that position anymore in the draft. So you can think about it that in that mindset, and also like with these amount of weapons, like who cares what kind of offensive line he has? If he can get the ball out of his hand quickly to his playmakers, they can make plays themselves. So like if they have some quick passing plays, get the ball to Jamar Chase, get the ball to T. Higgins. Joe Burrow doesn't need to take his time and let the blocking play out. So like that can be their mindset, and also obviously the main point being that they already have chemistry, but still, I would have taken Sewell just to have that cornerstone on their offensive line for years to come. Have like every classic team, you have Kurt Warner and Orlando Pace on the line. Every dynasty, every classic team, they have that, quarterback and left tackle combination. So that's what I would have done if I was the Bengals, is to draft Sewell. So, the Lions do get a little bit of a steal there at 7, getting Sewell dropping that far.
Yeah, getting into another pick here, something that's quickly become one of my favorite annual events is the annual which 3-year starter from a huge school are the Raiders going to reach on in the first round. And this year it was Alex Leatherwood. With the Raiders, it's so frustrating because I think John Gruden is a really good coach, and I think he's really good at developing his talent. But him as a GM, him and Mike Mayock, I mean, they go 8-8, 7-9 every single season because they get really good coaches or get really good coaching. They go in with good game plans, but then they just get out talented. They just get out talented every single week on the football field. And it's a whether of, is Derek Carr going to be able to manage the game enough, play well enough within our system in order to win the football game. And I just feel like they lose so many close games because they lack talent on this team. And with Alex Leatherwood, he's a really, really good run blocker. He's a mauler in the run blocking game. Josh Jacobs is going to love to run behind him. But other than that, he's just not a good pass blocker. He had one of the worst Senior Bowl performances I watched this year. Just Quiddy Pay was destroying him on the edge. Just cannot react to the speed rushes off the edge. He has slow cement feet. He's going to be at best, in my opinion, like the 20th best tackle in the NFL. And I think that's like being very generous. And there are way better offensive linemen on the board. It was an absolute reach. And I don't know when the Raiders are going to sit back and say, our draft board is so significantly different from the rest of the NFL's, which is fine. The NFL is not always right with their draft boards and their draft decisions, but you've been wrong and the rest of the NFL has been right. So when do you sit back and say, again, why is our draft board so dramatically different?
Yeah, and if your draft board's going to be that dramatically different, then play the game. Trade down in the first round, or sit at 17 and get a guy that's like, if you can get Alex Weatherwood in the second round, trade up into the 40s, maybe a little bit of a reach in the second round, but it's better than taking him at 17. And I remember seeing something on Twitter about how it's like trying to give Vegas the pass because they drafted a second round guy in the first, but then they got that Trayvon Morag from TCU. They get a first round guy in the second, so it's all good. And then you start hearing stuff about how Trayvon Morag has all these back issues that scared away a bunch of teams. And the Raiders are like, nope, we're and like you said, Mike, if your draft board's going to be that much different than the league, you gotta play the game because not everyone's correct, but you're not getting any value. And I keep going back to like Cleveland Farrell, that first year drafting. If you really think he's the best pass rusher, then trade down and get him. Don't add the salary cap of that huge huge pick difference of pick 4 versus pick 14, and then don't add the pressure to him of being this huge reach in the top 5 because he's going to think about that. He's got Twitter, he's got Instagram, he's going to see all these people adding him, telling him like, yo, you were the 4th pick. And, these guys see all that stuff and, like give some of these guys a break. Like Damon Arnett last year. He's going to look really bad for Ohio State in a couple years because we try to sell that we're DBU, but Damon Arnett at pick 19 is not going to help that. I didn't see him as a second round pick that year. I thought he was a 3rd or 4th round pick. I didn't really like him that year. And he goes 19 and just every year they're taking some guy just way too high.
I think it's just like the Raiders, aura they've created throughout the years with Al Davis's ownership, him picking, Ray Guy in the first round. I think they just have this mindset. They're like, we got to pick the most sneaky player that we can think of, even if it's just a terrible decision. I think they believe that they have to do that every year. They, like Jack said, they did that with Farrell, they did that with Arnett, and now they're doing it with Leatherwood. So I think they just keep, shooting themselves in the foot and getting this. They draft more for like raw talent than actual like solidified studs every year in their draft.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the Al Davis point. Sorry, it's Mike. That was good. Al Davis.
Yeah, you
throwback.
Just win, baby.
The speed kills, all that.
Yeah, they definitely still hold that mindset to be true. I think Al Davis had a pretty significant influence on John Gruden's life, certainly earlier on in his coaching career, in his first stint with the Raiders. But who do you guys look at for winning the NFL draft?
I don't know. Like, there's so many. I think like I'm a little biased, but like the Colts getting Kwity Paye that deep, like that was really, I think, a massive win in the first round. But I think a team like the Washington football team, they really got a lot of steals, that a lot of people weren't expecting them to get, and I think they had a really successful draft too. And then I'll say one more team, the Browns. Getting Greg Newsome, cornerback was kind of an issue for them. They got him, and then getting I don't know his name, I don't know how to pronounce it. The Notre Dame linebacker who I was really high on. I thought he was probably the best linebacker in all the draft. They get him in the second round. Yeah, so they were able to.
I don't know.
The Browns were able to. Yeah, the Browns were able to fill a lot of holes that they were struggling with last year, and I think they can even become one of the best, top teams in the AFC this year with those filling some of the holes that they did with these this rookie draft class.
The teams I liked, I would say I liked Carolina's draft. I feel like Carolina got Horn at 8 was interesting. Those guys were rising, and I remember seeing stuff that there was teams trying to trade in the top 10 for cornerbacks, not quarterbacks, and so I think you were going to have to take one there. if you really wanted one, if you weren't going to trade back to like, pick 11 or 12. So, and to get I liked Terrence Marshall in the second round because their offense coordinator is Joe Brady from that LSU team. He knows how to use him, and I liked them getting Deontay Brown in the sixth round from Bama. I feel like it's a really sneaky guard. Remember reading some stuff about how he's a sneaky NFL player. And then I liked a couple of Baltimore's picks were good. I feel like they needed another receiver for Lamar Jackson, but Rashad Bateman could play. And the guy he's a day one starter, and the guy they got from Penn State, they know how to coach the D line, so he's got a real chance to be good. But I liked the corners they got too, because they're gonna be able to develop. They've been developing corners for a while, and they got Sean Wade from Ohio State, who I wasn't really big on his last year. He can't play outside, but with Humphrey and Marcus Peters, Sean Wade's kind of forced to play safety or nickel corner, and that's the only place he could survive in the NFL. So he found a place where he has a chance. And then the other guy they drafted in the third round, Brandon Stevens, is a sneaky athlete, and like I said, they know how to coach secondary. So I like the chance that he has.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of good scheme fits there. And Sam, I'm sorry, I have to take this time to pick apart Chris Ballard in the Colts draft real quick. And Chris Ballard absolutely deserves the benefit of the doubt. He's been one of the best drafting GMs in the NFL over the last 5 seasons. I thought that Kwity Paye pick was an absolute A plus. I think that's around the range where he was going to get picked regardless. I thought it was good value, but they've made it very clear. Edge rusher and just rushing the passer is our biggest need, and we really need to address it. But just all their picks outside of Kwity Paye, I honestly thought were really, really bad. Dayo Degabo tore his Achilles the day before the Senior Bowl. He's going to be out all season. He's a guy who's 6'5", 285 pounds. That Achilles tear does scare me. I think you want to win now if you're the Colts. So picking a guy who's going to be on your IR for the first season, that in and of itself is questionable. But outside the injury, I don't see it with Dayo Degabo. He's a really bad run defender. He's a tweener between a defensive tackle and a 4-3 defensive lineman or defensive edge. I just don't really see it with him. And then you get Sean Davis in the 5th round. I don't really see it with him either. I know he's a thumper, but he has really bad cover instincts and he's not very fast. To pick Sam Ellinger when you want a receiver in the 7th round, regardless, I don't see it. I don't see it with Sam Ellinger. I thought he should have been undrafted. And in fact, I think they could have gotten him in undrafted free agency right after the draft. I don't even know if he makes the roster, if I'm going to be completely honest. You have a really deep receiver draft class. Go get a receiver because with their next pick in the 7th round, they pick some kid out of Charleston. Watching his highlights were like watching junior varsity highlights. Like it was really bad camera quality and all that. I just don't know with the Colts draft pick. And Chris Ballard definitely deserves, again, the benefit of the doubt, but not in love with the Colts draft. I won't lie, Sam.
I just think, their defense is obviously the strongest part of their team. So I think, drafting Deo, like, they're like, all right, we'll draft this guy, let him, like, recuperate, go into rehab, fix up his Achilles. Like, we have time. We have the players on our defense for him to heal up. And then once he's getting once he's fully healthy, we can plug and play him. Because, like, their strong suit is the amount of depth they have on defense. It's not just one player, it's the pack. One player's not going to, like, so if their edge rusher is a little shaky this year because they're expecting Deo to play and he obviously tears his Achilles, like they have 10 other ballers on their defense that can make plays. So I think that's the strong suit. But I like the point you said about bringing a wide receiver. I really hope they drafted a wide receiver, but they didn't. Obviously, I really wanted someone like Elijah Moore out of Ole Miss. He's a great route runner. He's very fast. He's kind of like the way Ty was. Earlier in his career, Ty is obviously older and he's kind of falling apart. So I really hope they would have drafted Elijah Moore, or I talked about how the Washington football team had a really good draft. They got Dimey Brown out of North Carolina. I really liked him as well. I know Chris Sims was very high on him too, having him in this top 5 receivers. So I wanted the Colts to draft him as well. So some of these picks are a little shaky, but I feel like that happens every year with Chris Ballard. Like he makes some of these picks that people are scratch their head out, and they always pan out. Ellinger, I don't know. I'm not really a big Ellinger fan, honestly. So I really could care less if they didn't draft him. I would have been happier if they didn't draft him. So that pick doesn't really affect me. It's like it's the 6th-round pick, so it's kind of like
Yeah.
let's swing for the fences with this one. It's like it's kind of that mindset with the 6th overall pick or 6th-round pick.
Like, I was happy you said it because I didn't really like the Colts draft either. I mean,
Yeah.
Quiddy Pay, I think that he's a plug and play guy, but we'll see how high his potential is for a first round pick. I think he was always mocked earlier than Jalen Phillips, but I remember reading some things about how Jalen Phillips' talent just bled, and I think that I know they couldn't get him, but um, Quiddy Pay is he seems like he has a ceiling on his game, as most Michigan
Yeah.
D linemen do. These Michigan athletes just there's only so much they can do. I mean, there's a couple of them, the Patriots and Rashawn Gary with Green Bay. They may be good athletes, but they just seem like they have some type of ceiling on their play. And like you said, in the second round to take that guy Deo, I mean, torn Achilles is just kind of a random pick. Like, I know you guys are really deep on defense, but I don't know. I just don't like. I remember like when Philadelphia a couple years ago took Sidney Jones. He was supposed to be a top 20 player, and they got him in the second round because he tore his Achilles. I mean, the Achilles injury is the worst injury in sports. I mean, if you're having that at 20, I'd usually stay away from you. And then I didn't like the tight end they took from SMU. He's H-back type. That guy, Kylan Granson, I think his name. I just Googled him just so I could sound smart. But I remember he's an H-back. Like, he reminded me of the guy the Patriots took last year, Dalton Keene, like a fullback tight end hybrid thing. Supposed to mostly be a blocker, but I feel like the Colts just need pass catchers. I mean, forget about the blocking. They need pass catchers. Like you said, Ty is getting old. Paris Campbell has all the potential in the world, but he's never on the field. I don't know. I think Carson Wentz could work there. I really do. But you got to give him some help.
Yeah, I think with the Colts, receiver really was a sneaky need going into this offseason. They didn't really address it. And then I love the points you brought up about Quiddy Pay, and I absolutely agree. When I watch Quiddy Pay, I think he's going to have a good effect day one with the Colts. I think he's their best pass rusher already, projecting outside of probably DeForest Buckner, even though he's more of a run stopping guy in the presence, kind of like F up the play type of player. But with Quiddy Pay, I see at best like high comparison, like his ceiling to be a higher end number 2 pass rusher. I never see him with his physical talent and not only like his tool belt, but just his physical talent alone. I never see him as a true number 1 edge, a true number 1 pass rusher, which that's fine. If you're picking with the 20th pick or in the 20s in and of itself, you're not always going to find that number 1 guy. But yeah, Jalen Phillips, I know the concussion thing makes me personally very nervous, but I think he was light years better than Quiddy Pay, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I mean, like the Colts, it's just I think the strength in numbers is their biggest. That's why they're drafting like this. You know, I feel like if a player like Quiddy Pay falls into your lap, you can't really like draft over him. Like I don't know who they would have drafted at that position, but bring up the Michigan point that Jack brought up. I know like Rashawn Gary was this world class athlete coming out of high school. He never really panned out. He never really developed. But then someone like the Steelers draft someone like Devin Bush, who is playing really well, and but it goes along with the point that Michael said about him being the second best pass rusher on the Steelers behind T.J. Watt. So I mean, he is still a very valuable player on that Steelers defense. So I'm hoping Quiddy Pay does pan out. He is he's just, he's a grinder. If you hear about his story, he's just been a grinder his whole life. So I think once he gets to the NFL, he's not going to like just stop being a grinder. I think he's going to still learn and develop.
Yeah,
That's true.
absolutely. And going into, I think you guys brought up the football team. I just wanted to make a quick point about the football team's draft. Jamin Davis was one of my favorite sneaky players of this draft. A little bit disappointed to see my Cardinals pick Zaven Collins over him, though I think Zaven Collins, I think it was a reach. I think it was a fine pick. But Jamin Davis, just his cover instincts and his athleticism out of just the linebacker position alone, playing that kind of rover outside linebacker position, being able to stop the run, not only that, but get on a tight end, get on a running back. And for me, when Kentucky played Alabama this season, and I watched repeatedly Jamin Davis in zone coverage guard Jalen Waddle and only be a step, 2 steps, 3 steps behind him. There was this really nice Jamin Davis play where he was going, or Jalen Waddle was going on a deep crosser 30 yards across the field, and Jamin Davis kept up with him and broke up the pass. When I see stuff like that, I just can't help but think Devin White, extremely, extremely valuable. I think that kind of Michael Kendrick's role out of the linebacker position has become one of the most sneaky, valuable positions in the NFL. A linebacker who not only could just stop the run, which I think is not very valuable in the NFL, but can also get back in coverage, guard players instead of grass in zone coverage, I think is really, really important. I think that's absolutely what Jamin Davis does. And I think he's going to be a great scheme fit with this Washington football team that has one of the best linebacker head coaches that I've seen in Ron Rivera.
That's a great comparison too. Devin White, like, because you think about Devin White and Davis, they're both fast, twitchy, sideline to sideline guys. They have that athleticism. And then I think what a big thing is how good your D line is. And can you eat up behind that D line, forcing wrecking havoc. And obviously Tampa Bay has got a great D line, and you've seen Devin White do it. And that Washington D line is just going to keep getting better and better, obviously with Chase Young, but I'm big on Sweat at the other defensive end spot. He's due to be a 10 sack guy with Chase Young, and obviously they got those big Alabama boys in the middle who can eat up. But yeah, Mike, that's a great one. Davis is a great player, and they've been coaching up that secondary as well. Cam Curl and I forget that other guy they have from UCLA at corner, and I really like the guy from Minnesota they got, St. Just. He should be able to play too. And yeah, the football team is looking really good on defense. And, they got that receiver from North Carolina and that O-lineman Cosme from Texas. So starting to add some up, but I feel like they need to address that they should have addressed that quarterback situation in some way, whether it was draft a guy in the second or third round. Not sold on Taylor Heineke because isn't he the starter?
Him or Fitzmagic.
Yeah,
they got Fitzmagic. I forgot about him.
I think it's going to be an open competition. I look at the Broncos and the football team off the top of my head. I think they're the two best rosters in the NFL that just has a glaring need at the quarterback position. And you would like for both of those teams to address the quarterback position in this draft. More so, obviously, with the Broncos being in a position to draft Mac Jones and Justin Fields and passing on them. I think they have this little glimmer of hope where, hey, we still really like Drew Lock, but we kind of want Aaron Rodgers. And I don't know if that's how you want to address your draft with a small sliver of hope. You might get Aaron Rodgers, but you might not. So, but just looking at the football team, Curtis Samuel, Terry McLaurin, and now you have Dyami Brown. I mean, that's going to be really hard to stop. That's three dynamic, explosive football players on your outside, and Dyami Brown and Curtis Samuel could play on the inside as well. And so could Scary Terry. Antonio Gibson, he's not the most high upside, most athletic running back, but he had a really great season last year, coming in as what I want to say a 6th round pick. So this football team, I would not be surprised to see them win that division because I think they're the best team in that division outside of the quarterback position.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, with their first round pick, they got Davis. I think they were going to let's solidify this defense, and then they added more depth later on in the draft. And with Dyami Brown, a player that I want the Colts to get him. A lot of people had him on their top 5 wide receivers. So I think next year, or even in the in the offseason, I'm not really sure which quarterbacks are going to be in the free agent this offseason, but I think next year they got to really look at themselves in the mirror and be like, all right, we need to make a move for a quarterback, because next year it's going to be like Spencer Rattler, who I'm not really sold on. It's going to be Sam Howell out of UNC. So, is that the draft that they really want to go after a quarterback? Because it's not really that good of a quarterback draft. Obviously, we have a whole football season to watch them, develop and become, higher end prospects at the quarterback position. But Washington, everywhere around the field, they have ballers except, that quarterback position, like you were just talking about. Moving on to our next topic, we have the NBA playoff preview. We're going to, not go into this because I'm sure in the future we'll have a more in-depth episode. So we're lightly talk about this. So obviously teams are clinching. The Sixers, Nets, Milwaukee clinch, the Suns, Utah, Clippers, Denver, and then a team that just won the NBA Finals, really struggling down this stretch these past couple weeks is Michael's. I don't know. Actually, I don't want to say you're Lakers because you're only a LeBron fan, but I'll put you as a temporary Lakers fan since LeBron's there. So what's happening with the Lakers right now, Michael?
I mean, maybe we can just hit like one or two topics with this NBA because I know we've been going pretty long here. But man, Draymond Green had a comment at, I want to say, around game 20 of the NBA season where he said he was speaking about an anonymous player and he's like, I came up to this guy mid game and I was like, dude, like you're tired. I've never seen you out of shape like this. Like, is that short off season really beating you up? And Draymond Green was like, yeah, man, I've never felt like this in my life. I've never been playing with it like this in my life. I was watching the night before Draymond Green made those comments, Golden State Lakers. I'm absolutely convinced, and so is NBA Twitter, that he was talking about Anthony Davis in that quote. Just that month of rest or lack thereof, going from bubble champion to start of the season, it's just taken such a toll on Anthony Davis. I mean, it was so predictable that he was going to get injured. And so before the injury, he was just playing really bad, really tired, really lethargic, and then got injured. Then post injury, I think he's had one or two good games, but for the most part, Anthony Davis just hasn't been the same player, which really does make me nervous with Anthony Davis and his just style of play. I never realized about Anthony Davis until I really started watching him. He hits the deck like 20 times a game. It's absolutely crazy. He just flails all over the place. And it's not even like he's a flopper because he's not at all. He's genuinely just kind of uncoordinated when it comes to staying on his feet. Not only is that a problem, Montrezl Harrell hasn't been the best for us. He's just kind of a high energy role player, in my opinion, at this point. His play kind of depends upon his energy level. 3 minutes into the game, he'll be really good. But then if he's playing for a 10-minute stretch, he'll start to look really bad offensively and defensively. Dennis Schroeder's been really good, but it's just with LeBron teams, to sum it up, not only are you taking away a great player from a kind of subpar cast, but you're taking away the system. And that's why you see LeBron teams crumble when LeBron doesn't play. Again, you're not only taking away a great player, you're taking away the entire foundation, the entire system of your team. Because on offense, it's give LeBron James the basketball and let him do the work, because Frank Vogel is a great, great, great defensive coach. I think he does really, really good with that defense. And he did a fantastic job shutting down Damian Lillard in the bubble, shutting down James Harden, shutting down Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, and then just going into the NBA Finals and having success against that Heat team. But Frank Vogel is not the best offensive coach, and they've just struggled offensively without LeBron. They've been the 30th ranked offense in the league without LeBron. I think around 16th defensively, and it's just very predictable, and it's nothing that was kind of unforeseen with the Lakers this season.
I like that Anthony Davis tidbit from Draymond Green. I thought you were going to say LeBron there, even though LeBron looked good before that ankle injury. But yeah, Anthony Davis has not been himself, and he gets that injury that just reminded me of Durant, the calf strain, and then
Yeah.
leads to an Achilles tweak, which always leads to, when you keep playing, a tear. So AD not himself, and like you said, Mike, LeBron being the system is always been LeBron's. I always feel it's been LeBron's problem.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's worked for him. It has. I mean, he's a little, it makes his teams too reliant on being top heavy. He needs his second best player needs to be a guy who can, you give him the ball and he can score 20 to 25 points. And, you need shooters, and it's a very specific system. But I think that's their biggest problem, is that Dennis Schroeder playing really well, keeping them alive. But now that he's hurt, I mean, they're just, he's going to have to come back and get ready for, hopefully, if he can come back before the season ends. I mean, that's going to be just him trying to get loose and get ready for a playoff run. And I don't know. It seems like they don't look like they're in the best shape to win it. I mean, you never want to doubt LeBron, but now LeBron's clearly in his own head. I mean, the ankle, I mean, he's clearly not, it seems like it's a little bit of a worse injury than that groin injury his first year with the Lakers. Obviously, I think him being, on a really tight schedule playing basketball, he hasn't had much rest. That's definitely playing much more of a factor into it. But, uh, he goes out and says, my ankle's never going to be 100%, kind of does a little woes me, like trying to get people almost like he seems like he was trying to get people to feel bad for him. And then, now that they're in the playoff, now that they're in the play-in possibility, he hates the play-in, even though when they announced the play-in before the bubble last year, he loved it. And I don't know. I feel like he's in his own head. Anthony Davis is just, you've got like what, maybe 5, 10, if you're lucky, 10 good Anthony Davis games this season. And with Schroeder now being hurt, I mean, those are your 3 best players. And we'll see about whether they can avoid the play-in and get all 3 of those guys on the court before the season ends. That's kind of a big if having your. That's what I also think is Brooklyn's problem. Is Brooklyn's whole reliance is on the big 3 of Harden, Kyrie, and Durant, and they've played 6 games together. I think it is 7. So we'll see. But
I just think like for the first time, I think we see LeBron like a little scared entering the playoffs because obviously like when he's in the East, like he can coast to the playoffs, and then they'll play like the 1-seeded Celtics. No offense, Jack. It's 1-seeded Celtics with Isaiah Thomas, and they can just slam them into the ground.
DeMar DeRozan, Toronto.
Yeah, exactly. Like they can just coast into the playoffs and play those teams and slam them. I think the position that he is right now, they're the 6th seed and their potential to play in the 7th seed. They're gonna have to play some tough opponents. Right now as the 6th seed, if the playoffs start now, they would play the Clippers. Like they're set up to play some juggernauts in the playoffs right now in the first round that LeBron's never really had to do before. So I think, that's why he's getting a little scared. That's why he's like, I don't like to play in. My ankles hurt. Like, I don't know. I'm a LeBron fan. I think he's the greatest player of all time, but I think he just needs to, bear down and stop making some of these small excuses that he is.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Sam and Jack. I think he said kind of the quiet part out loud with his I'll never be 100% again. I hate the intent behind that comment, like the woe is me. You're absolutely right. I completely agree with that comment nonetheless, though. I've been saying since 2018, I thought the last 100% prime peak LeBron game we saw was game 1 of the 2018 finals. I think after that game, when he kind of let out all of his frustration, not a lot of people know he broke his hand in the locker room after the game. He punched a wall and he kind of coasted the rest of that series and they got absolutely swept. I know he's been great since then. Obviously, he scores 38 points in one of the NBA Finals games last year. I mean, he was the Finals MVP last year. I thought he was still the best player on earth last year. And I think, at the beginning of the season, it was kind of looking like he was going to be the best player in the world in the playoffs. But with LeBron saying, I'm never going to be back to 100% again, it's just, again, I don't like the intent behind it. And then him complaining about the play-in, I think it's very valid to have questions about the play-in, but don't bring it up now. Bring it up when it gets first proposed. He's very clearly only bringing this up now. And so is Luka, and so is Mark Cuban in the Dallas Mavericks as well, just because they're going to play in the play-in tournament. But I want to read you guys off their remaining games. I think they're the 6th seed right now, which they're going to play in the play-in tournament if they remain the 6th seed. But they got the Clippers tomorrow night. Then they got the Trailblazers. Then they got the Suns, the Knicks, the Rockets, the Pacers, and Pelicans. I know the last 3 games there should be winnable games, but I mean, the first 4 games in that stretch are going to be extremely tough. And I mean, most likely, I think the downfall of the Lakers this season is they're going to be going into round 1. It's going to be a 6-7 game series. Round 2, 6-7 game series. I don't think their guys can stay healthy to sustain every single playoff series. You're going to be playing 6 or 7 games. I don't trust Anthony Davis with his injuries, and I'm getting a little bit nervous about LeBron's injuries as well.
Yeah, I like how you said that. Maybe this is the last time, or that last time we ever saw prime LeBron was that Golden State game. But even I don't know. He seems like he does have another level that he could tap into in the playoffs because you never see him make his mid-range shots, especially his fadeaway shots at the level he does in the playoffs. I mean, that game, I think it was game 5. They lost to Miami, but that game where him and Jimmy Butler just went toe to toe, and he still has that ability to keep them in. And I feel like if he is at some type, if he's as close to 100% as he can be, and AD is at least out there, like maybe he's not AD with 28 a game, 3 blocks, like just being the wrecker that he is. If AD and Schroeder could be out there contributing, um, as long as the guys are hitting shots, LeBron is going to find his ability to just find the open man and then get into his groove, hitting fadeaway shots. I still feel like he just might be too good for. I mean, I like Phoenix, and I think Phoenix has a chance. But all these teams, LeBron is still, if he can tap into that level, he's still the best player against Utah or the Clippers. I really like the Clippers getting Rondo. I wanted them to get him in the offseason because that was just what they needed. They need a point guard. Their offense runs through 2 guys in Paul George and Kawhi Leonard who just don't play create. They don't.
Yeah.
And you get the point guard. It settles down your offense a little bit, but I want to see the Clippers actually do it. I really like Kawhi Leonard. I think he's a top 5 player in the league, but he's also a guy who's an addition. He's like a great receiver in the NFL. He's the icing, not the cake. I mean, you saw him win in San Antonio with Duncan, and I mean he brought that team back to life. But that because they're all older, but they won a championship there, and then he goes to Toronto, who had always been this great system of players, Kyle Lowry, all these guys fitting around him, and then he takes the place of DeRozan. DeRozan is a All NBA third teamer, playoff choker, and then you add in Kawhi. He didn't have to be the leader. The leader of that team was Kyle Lowry. With the Clippers, I want to see them actually face some adversity. They lose a game on a buzzer beater to LeBron or AD, it's over. They choke away a 5-point lead in a minute. They're going to lose the series. And I feel like with Utah and Denver, they don't really have the guy who can hit the shot when it counts. I really like Donovan Mitchell, but I think he's until we see it. And the only team that really scares me is Phoenix. But then again, with Phoenix, you have Devin Booker, who you've never seen there, and then Chris Paul, who's an all-time point guard. He has more losses than wins in the playoffs. So, like you said, Mike, I think the thing that's going to stop them is going 6 games in the first round, going 7 in the second round, at some point just losing all the gas in the tank. But I don't know. I want to doubt LeBron, but I need to see it first. That's my one thing is it's the West. It's tougher, but he's still the best player in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of the Tom Brady effect where you just can't bet against them. If you bet against them and you're wrong, it's like, why would you bet against him? And if you bet for him and you're wrong, it's like, well, that was the safe bet to make anyways with LeBron. Their saving grace with the Lakers is if Anthony Davis could play 95% to what he normally plays at, or even 90, 85%, the Lakers are most likely going to have the 2 best players out on the court at all times. Though I love the point you made about Kawhi Leonard. I think he's tremendously benefited from these systems, the great coaches in Nick Nurse, Greg Popovich, the great players he's played around, but even more so than that, just the structure. Because my issue with Kawhi, though, I think come playoff time, since 2015, where he really emerged on the San Antonio Spurs, they were up 25 in that game 1 against the Warriors when he went down with that really bad injury with Zaza Pachulia kind of getting in his landing zone. I think Kawhi, Kevin Durant, and LeBron James are just in a tier of their own with 3 players come playoff time where they're just the most valuable players in the league, in my opinion, come playoff time. And that's no slight to James Harden, Steph Curry, and all those guys. But you look at the past 15 NBA Finals MVP winners, they are all wing players outside of Dirk Nowitzki. And even him, he played on the wing offensively at times. So it's just so valuable to be not only physically dominant, but dominant with your skill set. And with Kawhi, he just needs to step up as a leader. I just feel like he's a 9 to 5 guy where he'll clock in at 9 o'clock and he'll leave at 5 o'clock. Like, he doesn't go above and beyond. With the Lakers, Danny Green was talking about it on JJ Redick's podcast. He's never seen team chemistry like he did with the Lakers last season. This is a guy who spent the majority of his career with San Antonio Spurs. Like, if one guy went out to the movies, 15 guys went out to the movies. If one guy went out to eat, 15 guys go out to eat. LeBron would always, every single week, have all those guys at his house eating dinner, just building team chemistry. And I think that's the missing part of Kawhi Leonard's game, that leadership role. Not only that, but yeah, you said it with the playmaking. I mean, that really came back to bite him in the playoffs last year. I know game 6 and game 7, Kawhi really struggled to get it going. He had 16 points in game 7 with really bad shooting. And it's just, he can create for himself, but he just can't create for his teammates. But with Rondo there, that definitely helps the Clippers.
Yeah, it's just like LeBron, or Kawhi being not that vocal. I think that's gonna what's hurt him in the playoffs. And then LeBron, like, even if he isn't 100%, the leader that he is, the IQ that he has, like, that's why, 0-0 LeBron 30 in the playoffs is a thing. That's why, because he's so vocal. Even if he's hurt, he still has more abilities than anyone else in the league. That's why he can, bring his team to another level. And then the Clippers, I think this might be their year since the out of the West, since the Lakers are down this far in the standings. I mean, personally, I'll be rooting for the Suns because I am a big Chris Paul fan. And going to Utah, I think anyone who I've talked basketball with knows this. I hate Rudy Gobert. I think he's just a cancer, a black hole on offense. So I think Utah's just stuck in their ways until they kind of blow up the core with Gobert.
Yeah, with Utah, I don't want to disrespect Utah. Jack, you can go ahead.
Oh no, Mike, I just wanted to. I loved your point about. Like, I know you said something about, like, the guys who are difference makers are the wings, Kawhi, Durant, and LeBron. But something I'm just really passionate about, and I think that LeBron is going to be the better. Like, he's going to benefit. He's going to benefit from this. Is him, Durant, and Kawhi know that in the playoffs, it's not 3-pointers and free throws. That you need to get the tough buckets. That sometimes, like, LeBron early in his career, this was his problem, but now he gets it. He knows that, the game slows down, and sometimes it's not better for me to drive and find the open man. Oh, the best shot is me taking a 20-foot away fadeaway. It is, because I'm more likely to hit it than Kentavious Caldwell-Pope hitting that three. And you see, like, Phoenix, you see Utah. Those are very 3-point reliant teams. With Phoenix, the only guy who would be shooting a mid-range shot like that is 6'1" Chris Paul. If you're going to stick LeBron or Kawhi on him for a possession, I like your chances. And I just feel like that's a big thing with LeBron is he knows the smart shots for him and AD. And he's had his painful moments where he's, with the Kyle Korver 3 in 2017, or, his times that he's passed instead of shot. But I think he's finally learned. And I think you really saw that last year in the finals. He was just like, it's me versus Jimmy Butler. That's the game. And last year, I really think last year was one of his best finals ever. Even not really as good as, obviously not as good as 2016, but I think it's him. The way he played was better than any of his losses, and even his first 2 Miami wins.
I absolutely agree with you there, Jack. You look analytically, hey, I'd rather have a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope corner 3 than a LeBron mid-range. That's what the analytics say. But come playoff time, throw that out the window, because LeBron just does such a great job at understanding. I just can't explain how he's so much better at the mid-range game. You talked about it before, than he is in the regular season. In the postseason, he's like a league average mid-range shooter in the regular season. Then postseason, he's like God tier at that elbow shot, those fadeaways, and just the know-it-all too. I know everyone says the ISO game in the mid-range is dead, but just Kawhi Leonard on that Toronto run, LeBron James and really all of his playoff runs, Kevin Durant with the Golden State Warriors, that's their go-to. At the end of the day, you need to have guys that can go get buckets, because your average role player is not stepping up in the playoffs. So you need your superstar player to really step up to the table and understand, throw some of the analytics out the door. And I think this has been the Rockets' problem with kind of their stint. Kind of throw the analytics out the door, play basketball, and just get your best players in the best opportunity to score. And just, it's so important come playoff time to not have a skill or physical limitation. I always look at Steph Curry and say he's such a great player. You can argue in his unanimous MVP season, he was maybe the best regular season
The
player that
MVP this
season.
year.
Maybe the MVP this year. He's been playing phenomenal this year, but you look at point guards, you look at centers or big men, usually they have that skill deficiency, whether it be defensively or offensively. But you look at a guy like Steph Curry, just playoff series after playoff series when he's playing great, but he's getting just pressed on just all day, getting physical defense. And then you get to the NBA Finals, 2015, Matthew Dellavedova for 48 minutes just is in your grill, in your face. It's hard to take that physical pressure when you're not physically dominant like Steph Curry is. And I think that's why Steph Curry is a Finals MVP virgin. And I don't think he's ever going to get past that, really, even though I do love Steph Curry. But again, with Kevin Durant, LeBron, and Kawhi Leonard, they just are rare in the fact that they don't have a physical deficiency because they're physically dominant. 6'7" with Kawhi, 6'8", 260 pounds with LeBron. And then obviously Kevin Durant is a fringe 7-footer. So these guys come playoff time, I'm pretty confident that this season one of these guys is going to be hoisting the Larry O'Brien trophy. But getting into the Suns real quick, for me, the X factor is DeAndre Ayton. Is DeAndre Ayton going to step up? And my wake up moment with DeAndre Ayton was round 1 of the NCAA tournament when Arizona got upset, I think 1 versus 16 seed, and they lost. DeAndre Ayton just lacks that next gear aggression, and that just makes me really nervous come playoff time. And I think he potentially can have a pretty bad playoff run this year.
I think just like obviously if you look about the tournament, they're all 18-year-old, 20-year-old kids, but once they get in the playoffs, I think if he's playing poorly, I think Chris Paul will get in his face, start yelling at him because Chris Paul doesn't give a crap about anybody else's opinion. So I think Ayton, like he has the potential to start off shaky, but I think the veteran leadership that Chris Paul has, that's why I love him so much. I think he's gonna be a great coach one day. I think he's gonna be able to go in there and talk to Ayton and yell at him or coddle him, whatever kind of treatment he needs to get to the next level to perform in the playoffs. He'll get from Chris Paul.
And you never know. I feel like the Lakers' secret sauce is their bigs. You never know how, like, LeBron and AD and Drummond are all going to work together on the floor because, I mean, I don't think they've ever played together. But like you said, I think DeAndre Ayton is like that S factor for Phoenix because he's their only big guy. You saw in the bubble that the Lakers could just bully ball you. And it may be it may be the league of 3-pointers now, but I think a couple teams are really susceptible to the Lakers' size, and one of those I really think is Phoenix. If with Harrell, like you said, Harrell may not be, this guy you can rely on for 28 minutes, but now with Drummond, you can kind of flip flop how you play Harrell and Drummond and keep them fresh, not leave one on the court for too long, and allows them to be a little more flexible. With their lineups because that's kind of their secret is that they've got all these big guys and then they also have a 6'8" point guard.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's going to again be their X factor. I think it was in the last season, just being physically dominant, being able to interchange those big men. I do think they'll miss JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard a little bit in the playoffs, though JaVale McGee really got DNPs throughout the playoffs last year. And I know Dwight Howard was a little bit scattered with their minutes, but Andre Drummond, I should say, I'm pretty confident in his ability to just out physical and out muscle really all of the Western Conference big man outside of Nikola Jokic. But with Nikola Jokic, what I love to see in that Western Conference Finals last year was you take Rudy Gobert, Sam. He's not really going to keep up defensively with Nikola Jokic in the playoffs because Nikola Jokic is that great. He's going to give you around 25, around 10 assists every game in the playoffs, regardless of the defense you play on him. The difference between Rudy Gobert and Anthony Davis in the playoffs is one, Anthony Davis's switchability, his ability to go to Frank Vogel and say, hey, I want to get Jimmy Butler the rest of the series on defense, and I'm going to dedicate the rest of the series to my defense and play great on the wing on Jimmy Butler. Not only his ability in the pick and roll defensively, but it's just offensively. Anthony Davis, arguably the best defender in the league. Hey, if Nikola Jokic gives me 25 and 10, I can give him 25 and 10 rebounds on the other end as well. And I think that's where Anthony Davis's value really comes in playoff time. And that's where Rudy Gobert's value really gets devalued in the playoffs because he's not nearly as good of a playoff defender as he is a regular season defender. Not only that, but again, offensively, he is a bit of a black hole.
Yeah, like Davis can get his own bucket. Jokic can get his own bucket. I don't think there's any point in Gobert's career or future career that he can get his own bucket. He relies heavily on what Mike Conley create or what Donovan Mitchell could create. He's not like as in the playoffs you need like your second best player to go get his own bucket, and Gobert can't do that. So like you're talking BS. However good as they want to be, they can be the number one seed. They can be the best team in the NBA. I just don't see them going far in the playoffs.
Yeah, Sam, I've never been a Rudy Gobert guy. I never got. What do you think? Is that the worst contract in the league? Like that's one of them. I mean, I thought Wiggins was a pretty bad contract when they signed him, gave him max money when he was a 20-point per game scorer on 35% shooting. I think this one was probably top that. I mean, he's what 16, 17 points per game on just yeah, like you said, he's a I need you got to give me the ball guy. He's not a I take the ball and score. He needs to be fed, and for him to be your second best player is just tough, so tough. I mean, he's great against some teams that drive to the rim, but these teams that shoot, I mean, he can't. And if the teams are good at switching, like Phoenix, I don't know if you saw that Phoenix Utah game the other night, and Phoenix can just throw out some great lineups where they're so switchable. Just having Ayton and then 4 wings, and then or 3 wings and Chris Paul, and you get that's where you get Rudy Gobert trying to cover Devin Booker, Chris Paul, or even like Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson. Those guys are just going to roast him.
Yeah, I think switchability has quickly become the most valuable defensive asset in the NBA. And I think the Golden State Warriors really perfected that and started that trend. And it really did come to fruition with the Lakers last year. Watching that Rockets series, watching the entire series, Dwight Howard guard Russell Westbrook and just them switching everything. Just it was really telling to the future landscape of the NBA. And again, once you go to the NBA playoffs, you can't have Rudy Gobert switching on to Jamal Murray because he's going to roast you for 30 a game. And that's exactly what happened. So with them, just their entire identity is we're going to be a great defensive team around Rudy Gobert. And that really gets limited come playoff time. But again, I do like your point about the Suns. They have such good switchability defensively. The Clippers really do too. I think that's one of the Clippers' saving graces, though their big man position is very shaky with Ivinka Zubats. But again, it's defense. Defense still wins championships in the NBA, and so I'm looking at the Clippers and really the Lakers to come out of the West. But to come out of the East real quick, I think I'm very confident in that. If the Nets have 2 of their 3 stars, then I think they are pretty much a shoo-in for the Eastern Conference title.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a cakewalk for the Nets. Brooklyn, like they, I mean, 76ers, they always play well in the regular season and then go to the playoffs and just drop a goose egg. And then, Giannis he's an unknown commodity in the playoffs, doesn't really play that well either. And then Chris Middleton is very shaky. I'm excited for the Eastern Conference playoffs, see what this young Knicks core can do. They're playing very well right now. So once they make the playoffs, get some experience under the belt. I don't suspect they're going to win I think they can win a series if they play the Hawks or the Heat. But I don't think if they make the second round, I don't think they're going to make a past that. So I'm excited just for them to get experience under the belt.
You guys just think Brooklyn's just going to run through? I don't know. I mean, I feel like you got to give Philly. I'm being a Celtics fan. I've seen them choke to collapse on themselves, especially to us. But Philly looks different this year. I really believe it. I think Philly has a good chance to beat Brooklyn. Milwaukee, I'm with you guys. I think it's kind of a wait and see. Last year was disgusting. They have no way to score in the last minute. They have no one who can just take the ball and score. But I know Philly doesn't exactly have that either. But if they get Embiid in the paint, actually leave him there and tell him to stop shooting threes, in the fourth quarter. I don't know. I don't know how Brooklyn stops him.
Yeah, no, I mean, Brooklyn is definitely going to struggle defensively. You look at the Milwaukee Bucks. For me, it just boils down to I'm not a Mike Budenholzer believer at all. I know he musters up a great defense in the regular season, but his defensive philosophy of we're going to play great paint defense, we're not going to let you score anything in the paint, and we're going to kind of dare you to shoot threes, that just doesn't work in the modern day NBA in the playoffs. And that's why the Heat absolutely roasted them offensively last year in the playoffs. Um, Not really. I'm not gonna really get into the Giannis whole playoff thing because that can be a whole different spiel. But I saw a stat: Drew Holiday this season has a lower usage rate on the Milwaukee Bucks than Eric Bledsoe did last year on the Milwaukee Bucks. And for me, that's just inexcusable for Mike Budenholzer. I just don't get it. I don't get his offensive and defensive system at times. And I'm just not confident that they can go to the NBA Finals with Mike Budenholzer at the helm. Then you get into the 76ers a little bit. I think Ben Simmons just has to put his head down and say, I'm going to guard Kevin Durant every single second of this series and play him to the best of my ability. And that's that. I think just offensively, he does clog the offense, in my opinion, in the half court. And that's the issue. Once you get to the playoffs and everything slows down, you play more half court offense. And Ben Simmons just kind of stands there at the dunker position on the block on offense and doesn't create too much on offense in the half court come playoff time. It's just a big issue for me. And Tobias Harris, you're really, really relying on him to step up, in my opinion, in a pretty significant way. And with Joel Embiid, he played great in the playoffs last year, even though they were a first round exit. But before last year, he had some games where he did look tired. The kind of grind of the season did get to him. I think that rest he had with his injury is going to help him come playoff time a little bit. But again, for me, it's just kind of a wait and see with everyone else. And I just know that Kevin Durant is going to be great in the playoffs. I think James Harden is going to be great in the playoffs with him fully embracing being a point guard. And with Kyrie Irving, I know you know as a Celtics fan, let's not forget last time we saw Kyrie Irving in the playoffs, he was really, really bad in that Milwaukee Bucks series. He shot 38% from the field, and he famously said, when asked after game 2, game 3, game 4, are you going to stop shooting as much because you're struggling, and kind of defer to your teammates? And Kyrie Irving thought that was an asinine comment and said, no, I'm going to keep shooting. And kind of his selfishness led to the demise of his relationship with the Celtics and that Celtics team in general, because they really underachieved that second season with Kyrie. So
Thank you everybody for listening. We hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next one.